What's going on, Bengals fans? Chris Daughtry back with you guys here again on Bengals Breakdown, and we are talking trade rumors and ideas here on today's show. The NFL trade deadline is just about 2 weeks away, so we will see. The Bengals right now are 3-4. We're going to see if they're going to end up being buyers or sellers here in the next couple of weeks. And I do think what the Bengals have coming up on their schedule here in the next couple of weeks are really going to be the determining factor whether or not they end up being buyers and sellers. The Bengals are 3-4 right now. They are still number 2 in the AFC North, just one and a half game, whatever you want to call it right there. Games behind the Pittsburgh Steelers in the AFC North standing. So you are still right in the mix for the playoff hunt right now with what you have in Joe Flacco at quarterback right now. Really, I think a lot of it's going to depend on the defense. So how can the defense get upgraded here in the next couple of weeks? Because, look, over the next 5 weeks, you have the Jets. That is an absolutely winnable game for this Bengals team. Teams that don't have a win yet, they're always going to be hungry, looking for that first win. But the Jets are really bad right now, and we'll see what happens on Justin Fields. But it looks like you might be playing against Tyrod Taylor, which, if we're being honest, could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing for the Bengals. I guess we'll find out on Sunday there. The Bears now have kind of turned the corner. They have won 4 straight games, but against competition that's not really that good. Against the Cowboys, the Raiders, the Commanders, that's a good win for them there. And then the Saints just aren't that very good either this season. So what really is the worth of those 4 wins for the Bears? How good is that team really? I think that's still a winnable game for the Bengals. Then you have the bye week as well, and then you go on the road and play the Pittsburgh Steelers again. I still think they're a very middle of the pack team. You saw, last week on Thursday Night Football, you already beat the Steelers. So it is hard to beat the same team twice in the same year, to sweep an AFC North team. But, hey, at the end of the day, that's going to be a very, very big game for this Bengals team. The Patriots do look good, but really I think a lot of that has to do because of their win versus the Bills a couple of weeks ago. They did lose to the Raiders and the Steelers so far this year. And they beat the Dolphins, the Panthers, the Saints, and the Titans. So I still don't really know how good that New England Patriots team is. So in my opinion, if the Bengals can build on the last 2 weeks and coming off a win now, they might end up being buyers instead of sellers at the NFL trade deadline. Make sure you guys are subscribed right here to Bengals Breakdown. If the Bengals end up making a trade, doesn't matter what time of day it is, if it's early in the morning, if it's during the day, if it's late in the evening, hey, if I got to do a video at home, we have got you guys covered. Do not miss out. Hit that sub button and stay up to date on all things Bengals news. All right, I know there's going to be a lot of people in the comments that are going to get really mad that we're talking about Trey Hendrickson trade ideas, but hey, don't blame it on me. Blame it on ESPN because they're the one that continues to bring this up here. With Trey Hendrickson, I think, I am not a fan of trading Trey Hendrickson right now, and I don't think the Bengals are either at this point in the season. Now, if you end up losing to the Jets, you might really have to, consider it at that point there, but ESPN did suggest a trade idea with Trey Hendrickson involved here. It's Trey Hendrickson going to the Lions. You also send a 2026 4th-round pick to the Lions as well, and you get a 2nd-round pick in return there. I am not that big of a fan of this trade at all. I don't want to give up Trey Hendrickson and a 4th-round pick just to get a 2nd-round pick in return. To me, that doesn't really make a lot of sense there. I think if you're going to trade Trey Hendrickson, you're just going to trade Trey Hendrickson and get some picks in return there because, as mentioned by ESPN as well, back during the offseason, the Colts were really a team that was involved in the Trey Hendrickson trade saga before he ended up getting paid there. And this was the trade that was actually, I believe it was proposed by the Bengals here. Trey Hendrickson for a high-end draft pick. I would assume that's either they probably wanted a 1st or a 2nd-round draft pick for Grover Stewart, a defensive tackle there. So, Albert Breer did report that Colts weren't budging there on Grover Stewart. So I know there was some people when we talked about these, Trey Hendrickson, questions or, trade rumors a couple days ago, a week or so ago. And, they were saying, you've got to get, if you're going to trade Trey Hendrickson, you have to trade him for, a first-round draft pick, multiple players that can start immediately on the defense. That is just not the reality of what the market is right now for Trey Hendrickson if you ended up trading him. So, if teams are saying no to high-end draft picks, I'm going to assume that's going to mean, the Bengals probably wanted a first-round draft pick plus a player for him. They said no to that. There were no other teams out there that were willing to really play ball with the Bengals, when they're asking something like this. So I think if you're going to trade Trey Hendrickson, second-round pick at this point, that just seems what the market is for Trey Hendrickson. So while I do not want to trade Trey Hendrickson, still, you're probably still not going to get a player and draft picks in return if that ends up happening. So let me know what you guys think. Do the Bengals trade Trey Hendrickson before the NFL trade deadline? Coming up, we're about 14 or so days away from that. So let me know what you guys think. Type Y for yes or N for no down in the comment section of today's video, down at the pinned comment of today's show. All right, so this was another player that was thrown out there as a trade idea, possible candidate for the Bengals. Carl Granderson of the Saints, an edge rusher there. I think another edge rusher on this team could definitely help this Bengals team. Yeah, you do have Joseph Osai and, Miles Murphy that has been playing, the majority. And then you do also have Shamar Stewart as well in his rookie season there. But Carl Granderson started off the season pretty well so far this season. And, what's interesting as well, his cap hit does skyrocket this year. The Saints are paying him $6.5 million next year. It goes up to $18 million, and then the year after that also goes up to $18 million, sticking around $18 million there for him, which is interesting because, the Bengals were able to pick up a Grover Stewart contract, which would have been about $14 million through 2026. We still don't know what the future of Trey Hendrickson is going to be at the end of this year. The Bengals could tag him. Maybe they end up tagging and trading him there. But they also could just let him walk. So we don't really know what the situation is going to be like with Trey Hendrickson at the end of the season. Joseph Osai and Cam Sample, both of those guys are going to be free agents after this season as well. So, an upside to possibly getting Carl Granderson in a trade here is you would have him locked up through 2027. So, if you're not necessarily willing to go out there and pay Joseph Osai an extra contract extension, that might be an interesting thing that I think the Bengals might end up doing because, look, $18 million versus $14 million, I don't think that's the biggest, difference in the world there. And especially, right now you're paying Trey Hendrickson, $31 million, something like that there. So it's a massive, discount there for Carl Granderson. And at the end of the day, I do think would be a solid edge rusher for you. You pair him up with either Trey Hendrickson or, Shamar Stewart. Just kind of depends what the Bengals end up doing with Trey Hendrickson at the end of the season. So we're going to have to wait till the end of the season to really figure out what happens there. But, if they end up, trading for an edge rusher here that is locked up over a couple of years, that might give you a little bit of an outlook about what they might do with Joseph Osai and Trey Hendrickson at the end of the season. All right, we'll come back here in just a second with some more trade options, but this show is brought to you by Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every single day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this football season on Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Prize Picks is the only app that offers stacks, meaning that you can pick the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. You want more than on Josh Allen pass yards, rush yards, and touchdowns? Now you can pick all of them in the same lineup only on Prize Picks. This is what we got going here for the Monday night slate of games. Got Jackson Smith and Jigba there. More than a touchdown for him. Could be receiving, could be rushing. Baker Mayfield. Love Baker Mayfield. He's been going off this year. Love the energy for him. More than passing yards for him at 246.5. And then Nick Chubb. More than rushing yards for him at 35.5. Prize Picks is super simple to play. You just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get your picks right, you could cash in. Play Prize Picks to get action on football in more than 40 different states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. So download the PrizePicks app today and use promo code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That link's down in the comment section and the description of today's show. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Now, ESPN also brought up Cam Taylor-Britt. We brought him up the other day as well. Now, I even saw somebody in the comment section saying, when we talked about this possibility of a Cam Taylor-Britt trade, that no, the Bengals definitely shouldn't trade Cam Taylor-Britt because at the end of the day, you still need depth at that cornerback spot, which I get, but look, man, Cam Taylor-Britt just has not been very good at all throughout his career here with the Bengals, and I think it should be up for consideration here. Now, this was the trade idea pitched by ESPN. You trade Cam Taylor-Britt to the Washington Commanders, and you get Noah Igbinoghene in a 2026 7th-round pick for him. The thing about this is Noah Igbinoghene hasn't played, really at all for the Commanders this year either. And, whether or not Noah Igbinoghene is a, slot corner and outside corner, that's also kind of up for debate there. The Cowboys, when he was with them, they kind of used him a little bit as an outside corner. The Dolphins also used him more as an outside corner as well. But last year for the Commanders, they mainly used him, at that nickel spot. So it just kind of depends, if you think he would even be a fit in this Bengals defense right now. This was kind of what ESPN said about both Cam Taylor-Britt and Noah Igbinoghene here. He said in the final year, this one on Cam Taylor-Britt, in the final year of his rookie deal, CTB is owed $2.4 million. It would be a surprise if he returned to the Bengals next season. So this would be an opportunity to move somewhere with a meaningful track record of turning around frustrating careers. He would step in as a reserve corner on the outside for the Commanders, who are allowing more yards per drop back without pressure than any other team this season in the NFL. On the flip side of the Noah Igbinoghene side of things, said Washington's secondary has been wildly disappointing all season. So it would be a surprise if the Commanders haven't been willing to turn to Igbinoghene. He hadn't played so far really a lot this season. Who did a solid job for them as their starting slot corner in 2024. Although the former Dolphins first-round pick played 26 snaps in Week 3 against the Raiders, Igbinoghene has been limited to only 10 defensive snaps across Washington's 5 other games there, with around $780,000 left on his deal and free agency looming after the season. There's no real benefit to having the 25-year-old on the bottom of the roster if he is not going to play on defense, as Igbinoghene is only an occasional special teamer. So this is the trade idea pitched from ESPN. So I want to hear from you guys down inside the comment section. Would you make this trade for Noah Igbinoghene for Cam Taylor-Britt, and Bengals also getting a 7th-round pick in return for him? Let me know what you guys think. Type T if you would make that trade, or P if you would pass. Personally, I would pass. I don't really see how it does either team any good. At the end of the day, the Bengals just get a 7th-round pick for a corner that doesn't play for a corner that doesn't play. And I've seen the comments. I know your guys' frustration about CTB just really has not been good over the past couple of years for the Bengals, and this year as well. It hasn't been very good either. Excuse me. And, now at this point, he was a healthy scratch last week as well versus the Steelers. And, Noah Igbinoghene, I know they said in the ESPN piece there that, he had a decent season last year in 2024. I kind of beg to differ. I mean, he gave up over 64% completion percentage there, multiple touchdowns, didn't have an interception for them either. So, I think the Bengals should probably consider moving off CTB, but for Noah Igbinoghene, I don't really know if that moves the needle for you, and I don't really know if he would be a fit in this Bengals defense either.